So what I want to ask you, when you talk about knocking the hustle, explain to this audience what you're talking about, because all of us don't listen to Kanye West.
No, I feel you. I mean, I don't really listen to. So I talked about neoliberalism in those three ways. That's kind of a class project that gives resources to the 1%. That's kind of a public policy project designed to change governments, both locally, locally, nationally, internationally. And then it's kind of a cultural project designed to make people and institutions kind of think of themselves in different ways. So what happens once that concept, right, once that I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman, once that cultural idea kind of becomes embedded in Black institutions and in Black populations, and again, it's important to state, this happens nationally. This happens to everybody, but because I'm writing a Black politics book, I'm specifically focused on Black populations. This is not something that Black people have and white people don't have. But I'm talking about Black people, right? Once that idea becomes kind of embedded in Black populations and Black institutions, then the concept of the hustle actually changes, right? So when we were growing up, when you were talking about a hustler or somebody running a hustle, you're basically talking about a con artist, somebody who's running game, somebody who's actually trying to get out of work, somebody who likely did not have a legitimate job, somebody who was basically trying to just run scams. But sometime, maybe around the 90s or so, the idea of the hustle and the hustler shifts. Instead of somebody who's trying to get out of work, the hustler becomes somebody who's consistently working. Instead of somebody who works primarily in the illegal economy, you're talking about somebody who can work in the legal economy, but somebody who may work not just in the legal economy, right, but they may have 3 or 4 jobs, right? And that isn't just a description. That is, we don't just say, oh, wow, yeah, this guy's hustling. That becomes the desired way people should be, right? That becomes kind of like, if you're not hustling, you're not really doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? So what that does is it kind of reproduces what I call is the neoliberal turn. And one way to look about, the effects of the neoliberal turn is to increase inequality. If you look at levels of productivity over time, like how much work workers are producing, what we see is a significant increase from 1970 or so, right? And some of that comes from technology increases, right? Like, for example, because I got a smartphone, my students can contact me basically anytime I'm awake, through email or something, whereas before they used to not be able to do that, right? But if you look at wages have flatlined. So we're far, far, far more productive, but we're not making any more money than we made like in the 70s, even though the cost of everything will increase. So the consequences of the neoliberal turn is increasing inequality, and that hustle makes us incredibly more productive, even as we're getting paid less, and even as we're being responsible, even as like all the public goods we used to have access to kind of dwindle, right? And I'll talk about that a bit later. But all that, to me, is the hustle. And what I wanted to do was knock that. I wanted to actually critique that hustle and everything that's associated with it, right? Because we're in a moment now where if somebody ends up falling on hard times, and I talk about I skirted, right, that hard times moment. I talk about that in the beginning of the book. The argument now is that somebody who falls on hard times for whatever, it's their fault and it's their responsibility to kind of hustle and grind to get themselves out of it. I wanted to criticize that with as much strength as I can muster. So that's why I kind of called the book "Knocking the Hustle," because I didn't want to I want to actually make a strong argument against that move where we need to be consistently working, where if we're not working, we're not about anything.